Hello. This is another episode of Willow Branches, the bonus series where I talk to some special guests about the stories we love. This episode is all about the Oz series by L. Frank Baum. So far I've done 2 books from the series as audiobooks, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and its sequel, The Marvellous Land of Oz, and I'm hoping to do the 3rd in the not too distant future. There's such a wealth of discussion to be had about Oz, and my guests on this episode are no strangers to this fact, as they have their own podcast all about it, called Down the Yellow Brick Pod. I discovered their podcast last summer, just as they were getting started, and I've been following and listening ever since, because their conversations are just so inspiring and therapeutic. They really are just 2 wonderful, delightful human beings. So I was absolutely thrilled when they agreed to come on and do this. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Tara and EmKay of Down the Yellow Brick Pod. So welcome, Tara and EmKay. Thank you for joining. How are you both?
Oh,
so good.
We're doing good. Thank you for having us, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's absolutely a delight. Thank you for joining. I absolutely love your podcast, which for those who don't know or haven't listened, it is called Down the Yellow Brick Pod, and it's all about Oz. And you've just done your first season, haven't you? Where you've been going through the first book, the original text, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, in depth, and you've been covering just so much. Like, you know, you start from I don't know how many words that are in that text, but it's a shortish book, and you've managed to get so much like life stuff out of it. It's been an absolute joy to listen to, and yeah, listening to the way you relate it to history and to the present day, it's just amazing. I've really enjoyed listening to that this year, or last year now.
Last year. Oh, thank you, Stephen. That means a lot for us to hear. We had such a good time doing the podcast, which we had like in our brains for a little bit. Like, I think it was the fall of 2019 when it started cooking in our heads of maybe creating a outlet for our Oz obsession. But then the pandemic just kind of made it, I don't want to say easier, but it was easier to be like, okay, we have this space and time. And little did we know that it would become this pandemic medicine for us of just being able to look at Dorothy's journey with every day she's waking up to not really knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it came at the exact right time because, I mean, Tara, even when we met years ago, we always were obsessed with Oz and had that shared passion and this dream of maybe doing something with it one day. But yeah, I mean, just these little correlations, it brought me so much peace and comfort just diving into the world of Oz and making these connections to everything that was going on in the world. And I'm just so grateful it happened when it did.
Yeah. And my favorite part of this whole thing has been like finding all these other human beings who love Oz, love fantasy lands, love classic literature like you, Stephen.
Yeah.
That has been the best part of this whole thing, is just extending beyond, I think, our own little backyard to other amazing artists that share this same kind of, I don't know, it's like a Fantasyland escape thing that I just love about Oz. It's totally like Harry Potter I love, but Oz is like my place that I dream of in my head.
Yes. That exceeded my expectations of making friends in this pandemic through screens and through audio. I mean, it's been so amazing.
Truly the best part.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes you think how lucky we are in a way that this pandemic happened in an age when we do have this technology and we can do this, you know, and we, you know, because if we didn't have the internet, how you know much we would be even more isolated.
Oh my gosh. I imagine like if this happened when I was a kid, like in the 90s, like would my school have been mailing stuff like every day? Like what would have happened? I can't even imagine.
Yeah. That'd be very different. Wow.
And even the 90s, we were pretty connected.
Yeah.
We had things, but like it would have been completely different.
Instant messenger
would have been popping.
Yeah. So you've touched on a little bit how when you first met, you had this shared love of Oz, and it's always kind of been there. But I'm curious, like for both of you individually, what has been you may have discussed this a bit actually in one of your first episodes, what your personal history of Oz is and like your earliest memory of Oz and that kind of thing?
Oh my goodness, yeah. So my first memory of Oz was around Thanksgiving time. I want to say I was about 5 or 6 and super young. And I remember being at a family member's house. It was Thanksgiving weekend. We were all just kind of hanging out. And one of my aunts gave me sort of like an early Christmas gift. And it was a VHS of The Wizard of Oz. I had never heard of it. I had never seen it before. We popped it in at that very moment. And that's pretty much all I did the rest of the weekend. I was obsessed. And as I've mentioned before, Oz-cessed. I have a visceral memory of the moment when Dorothy opens the door of her house and steps out of, the black and white sepia tones into the Technicolor. I will never forget that. It just took my breath away.
Yeah.
And I instantly fell in love. And from there on out, it was my favorite movie. I watched it all the time. So it just was so interwoven into my childhood. And then when I was 16, the community theater that I grew up performing with, we did The Wizard of Oz. And it was really exciting because it was opening this brand new state-of-the-art theater in my hometown, the Gallo Center for the Arts, which Tara and I got to perform at when we did Sister Act, bringing it full circle. But that was the first show ever to take place at that theater, and I got to play Dorothy for the summer. And that was just like golden summer of my life.
Yeah.
Meeting so many friends, getting to play that role, getting to fly, getting to work with a dog on stage. We would do meet and greets after the show and see all the little girls dressed up as Dorothy. So those are my earliest memories. And since then, it's just anyone who knows me will, we both get little gifts all the time from friends because they know that they'll love that. They'll love something Oz related. So it's just so, interwoven into who I am as a person, really.
Yeah, no, I feel the same.
Yeah.
I feel the same as I'm spilling coffee all over myself and nodding in agreement. So I grew up kind of dazzled by the old MGM Hollywoodland world of musicals and song and dance. And my grandparents were also very much, we just loved watching old musicals, and The Wizard of Oz just became a staple in those old musicals. We were so obsessed as a family, I feel. So my first Halloween in elementary school, I was Dorothy. I was in kindergarten, and it was a handmade dress by my Aunt Em, my own Aunt Em, my Aunt Emma, who recently passed. She would have been 100 this year. She's an amazing woman. She made the dress, sewed it from scratch. My Nana looked everywhere to find like the perfect pair of ruby slippers, and I just will never forget putting that little costume on for the first time and just feeling so seen. So like, this is who I am. I think I realized then too, like, oh, I become someone else when I dress up. I like this. This feels like a safe invitation to not be, I was a very shy kid growing up, not be shy, to maybe find some boldness. So I found that in Dorothy pretty early on. And then, it just was around our lives growing up. I did a Christmas tree competition with my family, and it was a Wizard of Oz theme when I was like in 4th grade. Just like little things like that just always popped up. We saw Wizard of Oz on ice.
Oh, yes.
And also, like, we both kind of were born at a great time. We were born into like when the 50th anniversary of the movie was like a big deal and still present, and all this new merchandise, like all this stuff was just out there.
Yeah. Similarly, for me, I think I was born like just after the 50th anniversary, so like early 90s, and I was trying to think like if I could remember my earliest memory of Oz, and actually I think it must have been for the 60th anniversary. It must have been like 99, and I think I was in a hardware store or something with my parents, and they must have had a display of like video cassettes of the Wizard of Oz, and I mean that's what makes me think it must be the 60th anniversary, because why else would they have them just in a hardware store? And I remember just like saying to my dad, oh, I've just seen this and I'd really like to watch it. And then I remember watching it when it came home, and that was like, so I would have been like 7 or something at that point.
Oh my
I also had a weird phase when I was about, 12 or 13. Me and my friend at school kind of got back into it, and so we watched it again and we talked about it, and then it became like a massive obsession.
Yes.
It's because it's so old now, and it's just been such a part of everyone's culture growing up. It's always there, isn't it? It just feels like it's part of the world.
Yeah, it's just such a personal thing, and it's so cool to be talking to you being in the UK and like your experience with Oz, because it is such an American fairy tale. It's cool to hear a little bit about your experience, and it doesn't sound like it's too different from ours.
Right.
We do have kind of different perspectives on it, because it is such an American, people call it the original American fairy tale, don't they?
Yeah.
And like I love that, because it's like at the time he wrote it, it would have been obviously modern. So it's like from his perspective, it's like he's bringing fairy tale traditions up to date and into his world.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think that first book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, is so special because it does have those kind of traditional structures to it, doesn't it? Like the repetition and the threes and things like, and every time they meet a new friend, it's like, oh, I'm going to get a brain, I'm going to get a heart. And then, what we were talking about it haven't been around for so long and stuff. What do you think makes it so enduring and popular?
Oh, that's a great question.
So great. I mean, the other day we got to be on our friend's web series where they were reading The Wizard of Oz, and we were just kind of bouncing around ideas of like, what can we leave the viewer with? And all these thoughts popped up of heart, brain, courage, who's your good witch, the meaning of home. Like those instantly spring to my mind from whether you've read the book or have seen the movie. Dorothy is searching for maybe these elements that the Scarecrow, Tin Woodman, and Lion represent, that she already has within her, but she just hasn't really recognized that yet. I think we all go through our daily lives sort of with that feeling of like, we have maybe what we already need inside of us, but sometimes we need a good witch to sort of draw it out of us, or we need friends or family to remind us of that, to help us see that. To me, it always has like blended comfort, the feeling of like, she does return to Kansas. She does want to go back to Aunt Em. She does want to return home, but also adventure, meeting new people, that acceptance that Oz offers. So these just really hit home, pun intended.
The dreams of all the characters are things that we can all relate to. We all want a home, and we all kind of relate to, our thinking side and our feeling side and our needing to be brave and stuff. So I guess that's as well why all humans will always be able to relate to it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it's such a metaphor for each of our journeys, each of our own yellow brick roads. It's so beautiful. And I think why it's survived so long is because there's people like us who want to be caretakers of it and keep reimagining it and reinterpreting it. And like, we've been really connecting to like the word revising, because obviously now like we've evolved as human beings, and also just in so many ways, especially this year with a lot of us having a racial reckoning in our country, of just our eyes opening to a lot of the human right issues that are in our world. And like, we feel like Dorothy would have cared about that. Like that would have been an Ozma, like if we go further into the books, that is something that Oz we would hope to be a haven for. So even now, like looking at the original text, we like put like kind of revising lens on as well, of like, well, how can this now connect to a young child today? Because for something to live, it needs caretakers, can't just be there. It needs someone like dusting it off and representing it. And that's what we are so intrigued with too, is just finding so many different people, like your audiobook too, like everything, like just people putting their voice, their spin, and finding how it can relate to a contemporary audience. Because I think it can. I think that's why it's so cool.
Yes.
I think it needs to be both preserved, and I think it also needs to be revised, which I think is the best way to like hold anything these days, because everything has dark and light. So we could honor what was before, but also do better moving forward.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I love that, because you're right. It is, and it leads on to the bigger question really of, what place do classic texts have in the modern world, because you know, people might say, should we get rid of them? Should we, if they're not, you know, if they're problematic by today's standards, or do we say no, they're part of history, and but just change how we look at them, and things like that. But yeah, I definitely think in terms of Oz, the way that you look at it, and you look at it through a 2020 or 2021 lens, is really powerful and important. And I think that's just how we should do everything, really. I'm sort of working my way through the rest of the Oz series for myself, and I'm definitely enjoying it. The sort of second and third books I quite enjoyed. The fourth one I'm finding a bit of a struggle.
Talk to him about this. This is her journey.
Gets a bit whimsical. And I think that they're really great, and I'm sure, like, especially at the time when he had so many fans, you know, wanting to read the next installment, it must have been amazing. Like, but I think nothing will ever beat that original text, because it is so universal and like core, isn't it?
Yes. I agree. And also, he wanted to write that first original book. Like, that was a huge breakthrough for him. The other books, like, I do think like Marvelous Land and Ozma of Oz, the two following sequels of Wonderful Wizard, are wonderful. I think that those two extend the world pretty nicely. But you can start to feel as you keep reading, like, oh, he's kind of stuck in this world. Like, he had to start writing for Oz more, because that is what kept him financially afloat. He had to write an Oz book a year. Yeah. That was how he kept his family out of bankruptcy.
And there was a demand. I mean, Stephen, these books are wild. I just finished Patchwork Girl of Oz.
Okay.
And I believe it's the fourth or fifth book. He has maybe a little epilogue note, or maybe it's in the introduction. Baum writes, like, this is the end.
He wants it to be over. So
I think it's at the end of the book. This is the end of the adventures of Ozma. And the land is shut off now, and they're done. And I hope you've enjoyed. And it's only the fifth book or so. You know that there's so many more. Yeah. So it's great to see his introduction sort of evolve into, well, you, the reader, are sort of forcing me to do this.
It reminds me of Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes, and how he tried to kill him off at the waterfall, and then like everyone was like, no, we need more, and I think even Queen Victoria was like, you better write some more. And so he was like, oh, actually he didn't die. Yeah.
I mean, that's totally, he was totally like golden handcuffed it into his own creation, which is wild. Because
so funny.
We talk about this too. Like, he wanted to be a playwright, a theater maker. That was his initial passion. And he found his fortune not quite in that sweet spot.
It's interesting that you bring up the theatrical side, because obviously there's the musical extravaganza, which you bring up quite a lot, and I think when he wrote the second and third books, he sort of had maybe in the back of his mind that this could be adapted for the stage after it's been published. So he was sort of writing, like, there's a bit at the end of Marvelous Land where Tip transforms into Ozma. And it's like, oh, and she goes onto a couch, and then curtains are drawn around her, and then there's a lot of smoke, and then they draw the curtains back, and it's like he's writing for a stage thing, you know.
Yes, you're so right. He put in stage directions. No, and that was the whole thing too, because Wizard of Oz was so successful on stage, they were really trying to crack open like a whole traveling musical series. They had the Woggle Bog of Oz, which bombed completely. That was kind of based off of, I think, loosely on some of the books, like it strung together some stuff. But yeah, you're right. He was sneakily writing for the stage, even when he was writing for us.
Have you got any like dreams of future adaptations you would like to see, or that you think deserve to be done?
Yeah.
Anything. I recently, going off of something that has already been created, I recently read the Dorothy Must Die series by Daniel Page. And I am so ready for a TV show version of those books. Tara and I are always like, it would be like a Riverdale version, like kind of sexy, kind of fun, kind of dark, some comedy like thrown Buffy, in there.
Yeah.
Yes, there needs to be.
It would be a new Buffy.
Tara and I have mentioned, like, in terms of maybe a TV series, I don't know if that's really happened in the modern
like a
world
like an Anne with an E version of, is that what it's called? Anne with an E, the one on Netflix for Anne with an E. It's like that version of Wizard of Oz. I would love to see that, but I'm also afraid that it will not do well. Like most of the stuff that happens has not done great recently. Like we were pretty openly like Oz great and powerful, like the Disney version not so great. And Emerald City was okay. That there was an NBC TV show from like 2017 that totally was in the throngs of Game of Thrones coming into the world and kind of did too much imitation, I think, of trying to be like this like I don't know, medieval version of Wizard of Oz and be darker. I think there could have been something there, but it was like misguided in how it happened. So yeah, like the recent stuff has kind of been hodgepodgey and like not as like Wicked is supposed to become a film, which that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that would be
great. There hasn't been something I've been obsessed with recently.
Right.
In like pop.
I think it's these modern, the modern process of producing something like that is there's so many cooks and so many hats, and like it's very hard for something sort of artistically pure to get through, isn't it? So what may have started out as a good sort of idea sort of gets polluted a bit.
And for me, I think we both talk about like, do we want to create something? And I think we keep finding ways to revise the world and also like, what would it be like if Dorothy landed in a world where the good witches, the witches were witches. They weren't fighting with one another. She learned how to be in good relationship with other women instead of getting this story that there's bad witches and good witches. That she landed and like they didn't like instantly make her have to solve their drama. It became like an awakening story for her. So we're like, there's something there. And who knows? It's one person's way of interpreting this. So it's fun to get, I think, more into the complications and the nuances and make that normal as opposed to you're good or you're bad.
Yeah. And that's what I feel like from his writing style, like it's in the first book, especially it's quite simple, isn't it? And there's quite a lot of empty space for the reader to sort of make up their own explanations and stuff. That could be part of why it's so popular, isn't it? That you bring your own thing to it.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the fact that he really allows you to become Dorothy's brain and her like, her instincts, because he really doesn't give you too much on her, just like it is. And also he's like reminding us how she needs to rest, how she's a human, like all of that stuff I think is so great that you get to take that on, which is cool.
Yeah, it's always funny when I tell people or my coworkers, I'm a co-host of a podcast about the Wizard of Oz. And if they're not, Oz-cessed like we are, they're kind of confused at first. Like, oh, are you just talking about the movie? Like, doesn't that you run out of things to talk about? No. I don't think people, if you haven't really read the book, maybe know, that it is written a little bit simply, and there's this really relatable structure that's really familiar. That we got so many like messages from people of here's how I interpreted this, or if I was Dorothy, what I would do, or how I would feel. So the simplistic sort of writing lends itself to making your own sort of connections,
which we don't see so much anymore. Like it's very old school style he has about how he handles the book. It is so like cut and dry. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. We count it. I think like the first chapter has like gray like 8 or 9 times. Like it's just like, oh, okay, we got it.
Here it is.
Kansas is gray. He just keeps using the same words. Like you said, the repetition. It's not about like, it's not poetry.
No,
it's not poetry. It's simple life lessons and like without being a life lesson. That's why it's kind of genius. It's not knocking anything over the head. It's just simply moving through this journey. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there were so many of those moments listening to your podcast that I thought of my own like little interpretations that I wanted to share and that kind of thing. You know the bit where they each go into the throne room for the first time and they see Oz in a different form. I was always trying to work out, like it feels like each of the forms is supposed to represent something. Like the head could represent the brain and so on, but I could never quite make it fit like fully Because why does Dorothy see the head? It's like they're for the wrong person.
Oh, like they're scattered about incorrectly.
Yeah.
If we want to get into it for a second, Oz himself in that moment was so putting on a last minute performance. Like he was improvising so much. So I think he could have also been like messing up and also test driving things to be like, which version of myself will I show to these characters coming in?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he nailed it, but we were trying to figure out too if they had any symbolic purpose or resonate in a way now. I mean, we feel like we've just survived a presidency of a talking head, so that's like where we're coming from. And like seeing it was actually really beautiful to see, like, isn't it it's the woman after, it's the woman ruler after the talking head. But interesting that the Scarecrow sees the woman, and it
feels to me like the form is right for the next person. So the head, and then that would have been the Scarecrow, and then you get the lovely lady, which kind of fits the sort of gentle feminine possible, the feely side of the heart. And then you've got like the beast, which it could be to do with being brave and facing the beast. But then you've got the fire. Like, I don't know, it's strange.
Yeah, I remember us talking about this, and I think we had more questions than answers.
Yeah. I think fire felt like an omen, though, for the water and everything of like what was, you would put out fire with water. That came up for us with like the witch, that being feeling like an omen of some kind. But yeah, I think some of it, we always are like, we're digging here, or like we're finding something that maybe was not intended. Honestly, I think a lot of what he wrote may not have been intended to be as deep as people have made them. Like,
I'm all about those interpretations, but I agree with Tara. I actually don't think he maybe was meaning to do that.
Well, I made some notes, and I wanted to try something as a sort of like a lightning round, like a few quick fire questions to see if you can answer.
Love it.
It doesn't have to be like super quick fire, but just like, a quick answer. So the first one for you both would be your favorite book in the Oz canon that you've read.
I mean, since it's top of mind for me, I love Patchwork Girl of Oz. I was really excited to meet her. And that one is one of the most wild to me that I've read thus far, the characters in there and just how she was created. There's, not to spoil it, just, she meets the Scarecrow, just throwing that out there, Patchwork Girl and Scarecrow. And I just that was delightful. So far, Patchwork Girl.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to reading that one.
Yeah.
I would say Ozma of Oz.
Yeah, I'm rereading that one at the moment, like in preparation for maybe doing an audiobook.
Yeah,
it is. It is fun, isn't it? It's got that sort of structure as well. Like I always think it feels a bit like a video game. The whole thing of like you've got to go and find the objects and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. And like, I live for Princess Langwidere. She is everything.
Yes.
I love her so much. This woman who has like rotating heads.
Yeah.
Really like, there's like a line where they're great. Okay, well, the queen is going to come back because she inherits this kingdom. And she's like, great. Like, I don't really want to do this work anyways. I was like, you know what? She's unapologetically like just like ruthless kind of in how she dominates and struts about the world. I love her.
When I do the audiobooks and I sort of come to work out characters and voices and things, I often have like I think, who would I cast? Which actor would I cast in this role? And Princess Langwidere, I just see Helena Bonham Carter, like the way she is in The Crown as Princess Margaret. Just like, well, her name is Langwidere, like she's very languid, I think. Like, just
yes.
What about your favorite non-canonical Oz story?
I mean, just another shout out. I loved Dorothy Must Die, the first one. Everything's topsy-turvy upside down. Dorothy is so fierce and scary, and I want to play her.
I would say Finding Dorothy has been my favorite read outside of The World of Oz so far. And it's such a great book if you're unfamiliar with it. It's by Elizabeth Letts. It was written a couple years ago. It's not too old. And forget like the actual term that's used to describe it. It is a fictional interpretation of real events, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's but there is a lot of truth in it. It's just she fills in the blanks where she doesn't know, where she found her research have some blanks. She chooses to take liberties there. But it documents Maud Baum's story, and it puts this beautiful connection. It goes back into her whole story of meeting Frank, witnessing this beautiful world of Oz develop in his brain, and being someone who encouraged him to release it and put it on page. Matilda Jocelyn Gage is in it. And then there's also what's happening in the 1930s is Maud was called to the set to talk to Judy Garland. And there's a whole beautiful relationship that is imagined between Judy Garland and Maud Baum. Maud being a witness to some of the abuse that Judy saw, that she saw Judy undergoing on set, and having this maternal wanting to take care of her, but also her heartbreaking seeing like, this girl is Dorothy. Like, this is the only girl who could play it. And like, there's a scene where she watches Judy sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow on set, and she like falls apart because Frank was dead at this point. Frank had died in 1919, 1918. I can't remember which year, 1918 or 1919. He died pretty young. Like, he was only like in his early 60s, I believe. He had a lot of health problems. It's a whole other thing. But she survived.
For a while longer.
She survived on. She, I think, lived into the 40s. So yeah, she got to go to the premiere and everything. This book is so cool.
It's really good. I cried.
I cried too. It's beautiful. So I know that was like a long answer, but it's a really, really fantastic read.
I might have to give that one a read, actually.
Oh yeah, please do, and tell us what you think.
Okay, who is your favorite character?
Mine is always the Scarecrow.
Good.
I just love him. And it could be, I think he's hilarious. He's witty. He's kind of the most clever of them all. He has these great one-liners. I love Ray Bolger in the film. I maybe had like a weird crush on him. That's kind of weird. I don't know.
I had a crush on Ray Bolger too.
And I loved, Judy's and his. I thought they had great chemistry, and just those characters. Yeah, it's really special. And so it's the first, friend she meets, real friend, I suppose. So I would say Scarecrow.
I think I'm gonna have to go. I don't know. I'm like, who is my favorite? I'm obsessed with the Good Witches. I'm obsessed with the witches now, and any interpretation of them. And I'm really feeling Ozma and Glinda. Like, I'm loving all this like woman power. So I'm, okay, let me just pick one. I'm going to go with Glinda. And specifically, there's a scene, why I'm picking her is there's a scene in Ozma of Oz, I believe. Yes, it's when Dorothy is like, I need to go back home. And like, they don't really know how to get her back yet again. They're in the same kind of situation yet again. And Dorothy, I think Ozma and Dorothy decide, well, let's go to Glinda. That's what you did last time. And that worked. So they go there, and Glinda doesn't really have answers, but doesn't let that on. She just kind of holds space for Dorothy to keep asking questions, keep figuring things out. And Dorothy figures out how to get herself home, but Glinda like holds the space for her to do that. And I think that's such a genius example of how to be a good friend, mentor, space holder. And like, sometimes that's all we need. We don't need someone to tell us what to do. Often when I'm given advice, I don't do it. Like, I'm like, no, because it didn't come from me. Like, it doesn't make, it's not aligning inside of myself. Unless like, it's like, it's a doctor thing, like, where it's like, I have no knowledge in this area. Please tell me what to do. But, like certain things, like you need to come up with them, or you need to feel it align inside of you. And I just thought that was I also think it's something Baum doesn't even know he did, I bet, but it's something that really struck me, like witnessing her just not give her answers, but encourage her to keep figuring out how she could solve the problem.
You're so right. And it's like, she's like a therapist, isn't she? Like she doesn't give advice. She just kind of asks you questions and guides you. And there's a bit in Marvelous Land where the Scarecrow goes to her saying like, what am I going to do? I've been usurped off my throne, blah blah blah. And she knows like what's what, but she just asks him like, how did that happen? And where did you get that from?
Yeah. Can you reflect on that?
Yeah, she is amazing, isn't she? Yeah, I love both those answers. Yeah, Glinda is really amazing, and Scarecrow. If you had to ask me, I think Scarecrow would be mine as well, just for similar reasons to what you said. But yeah,
he's endearing. recognize anything.
So endearing.
And I think you talked about this on the podcast as well, but like, why is he alive? It's so,
I think
like, if Dorothy, if they went and found another scarecrow, would that scarecrow also be alive? It's
I really think it was the Good Witch. That's where my Good Witch theory began, because it happened the day before, right? It was something
literally born yesterday.
It was so quick to happen in the timing of Dorothy needing a companion.
Yeah, I remember having that question, like, if they just came across another scarecrow in Oz, would they be alive? But I don't know.
Yeah, because then the Powder of Life gets introduced in Marvelous Land, and like things don't come to life unless they have this sprinkled powder over them.
Yeah.
I mean, also though, like Baum was not the best at world building. Like he was a little sloppy, or like, you know, like we often talk about the death part of Oz. Like so confusing.
Yeah.
You're either destroyed or you're young forever. Like it's confusing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how are their babies? I don't understand. Do you just go to a certain age?
No idea.
But there's old people in Oz. Like it's very, very confusing and how all that works.
Yeah.
It's almost like a father telling stories to his children, and then, like, you know, after several months the child asks another question and he's like, well, and then answers it and makes it up on the spot. You know?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah,
it's probably how it happened.
Right.
Yeah. Have you got a favorite piece of Oz trivia that's sort of little known?
Oz trivia little known. I love and I think this is true. I love the fact that Frank Morgan's jacket as Professor Marvel was L. Frank Baum's coat that they found in a vintage thrift shop in Chicago by accident. And the only reason he even knew it was L. Frank Baum's coat was it was so hot on set that he was like turning out the pockets to dry, and he saw his name and etched into the lining.
My God.
I mean, right? Like, if that is not,
if
like,
that is true, oh my gosh.
If that's like, that's when I'm like, there's a God in this world. Yeah. There is divine orchestration happening, because like, that's a needle in a haystack situation happening. Yeah. And there's many costumers who confirm it. Maud Baum confirmed it. That's also a big part of Finding Dorothy. Yeah. Is she goes to the set to be like, oh my God, that's his jacket. Yeah. They got it from like
chills.
I know, they got it from like a Chicago store, and that it would have made all of it made sense, because that's where he lived at the time he had this coat. Also, the coat could have been worn on him when he was like promoting the book. Like it's so nuts.
It's crazy.
That's a cool one.
Yeah, I love that one. I'm not sure if mine's trivia. I'm just obsessed with everything about the ruby slippers.
Oh my God.
In the film, I'm obsessed.
Steven, have you fallen down like the ruby slippers?
You need to watch
rabbit hole.
Is it called Slippers, the documentary? I think it's called Slippers. Oh my gosh. I am obsessed. I love the history that they made all these different test pairs. There was like a style that was like Arabian style that kind of had curled toes that Judy wore at one point. There, I think were maybe 6 or 7 pairs made.
One is like unaccounted for, right? Like
one is lost forever. There was like an FBI. The FBI got involved. The Slippers documentary. I think it's just somewhere online.
And there's a book called "Who Stole the Ruby Slippers."
This is a whole universe
crime
in and of itself.
As a crime nonfiction.
There was a pair on display at was it Hollywood Studios at Disney World?
Yeah, there was this pair on display at Hollywood Studios. I think that's the one that people are not sure where it is.
Like, I think that one might.
It's owned by someone, but they won't show anybody.
They won't show it. It's like locked away. Debbie Reynolds owned a pair at one point, I believe.
Yes, the Smithsonian still has a pair.
But then, like, those were stolen from her. There's all this drama.
Oh my God. There's whole worlds that exist based off of like one part of Oz that we can just tumble down.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect sort of encapsulation of what we've been talking about, isn't it? That it has been around so long and it will be around forever.
Yeah,
I think so.
I don't see it going anywhere. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all your stories and knowledge and thoughts. It's been absolutely a delight.
Of course. Thank you for asking us.
I can't wait to hear what you do with your next season of your podcast. You're going to be diving into the movie, aren't you?
Oh man, get ready. We're nervous.
Yeah. We're like thrilled and excited, and know like it's good. It's such a beloved. The history of the movie is so beloved. Right. So us like releasing, like, we're not gonna get this right probably in every detail.
Gonna be perfect, yeah.
But we want to find like the same kind of relevance to today. Like, where is this resonating today? And just kind of, I think, keep making some spiritual magic with the movie too.
Right. I need to rewatch the movie in preparation.
Go on our Patreon, and we made like a little thing, like it has rainbows everywhere. It's we put it up on there. It's like little things to look out for.
Oh yes, I saw it. Yeah.
That you will freak out over. Yeah, like, we didn't even know that the golden cap was in the movie. Yeah. I had no clue that it was in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like little tiny things that they just let stand. They didn't bother explaining or editing out.
I love it.
When I was saying I had that phase when I was about 13 and I was obsessed with it, there was a website that I found called Wendy's Wizard of Oz, like back in the days of, like HTML only. And it was like a treasure trove of trivia and all sorts. And I learned so many like little facts from that. I used to drive my family crazy, like telling them little trivia facts.
Oh, I love it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much, like, I think why it's so fun is that it's an imperfect film.
It is, yeah.
And like, that's why I think people love it so much, because there's like little things that you can catch.
Yeah.
Like her braids switching kills me.
Yeah.
Her braids just getting long and short and long and short.
It's so funny.
And the shoes, I never noticed that. It was the first time they must have like caught a little clip of something, or like it's with the apple trees. She's not in ruby slippers. She's in like a jazz shoe, like a black jazz shoe for like a little tiny clip.
Cut, yeah.
But they probably were like, whatever, like, we don't want to go back and get it. And like, no, like, honestly, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to notice it. It's too fast. Right. But it's wild. I was like, oh,
cool.
That's clearly like rehearsal footage, or like she was resting her feet.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that as a kid and just accepting it. Like, that happens in Oz. Your shoes change.
You remember seeing that?
I remember seeing it. Probably not like when I was super young, but maybe upon some rewatches, just like, oh, all right.
I always remember the guard of the throne room and his tears coming out of his eyebrows as well.
Oh I know, right?
I was always obsessed with him. I loved him always.
Love it.
Because I love that he let them
his
in.
Eyebrows.
I wonder why they gave Frank Morgan so many roles.
Oh,
I know.
Probably,
I wonder.
He was really popular.
We'll probably find that.
Time.
We'll probably find that out in the text of like what encouraged them to do, in like all these books that we have. Like what encouraged them to make him have 5 roles.
Yeah, there's several.
Professor Marvel, Wizard, Guard of the Gate.
Maybe it was because he was like big in his time, wasn't he? Maybe it's like encouraging him to be part of it, because if you're just a wizard, there's not much screen time.
Right. I think people would have wanted to see more of him.
Yeah.
Frank Morgan and Uncle Henry, they never knew any of the success Oz had, because they passed pretty closely to the film. I think Frank Morgan passed in the 40s. And same thing, Uncle Henry too.
Not too long.
They never saw the television stuff happen.
Yeah.
Like even Judy was just kind of seeing it start to become more of a thing.
Margaret Hamilton probably saw.
Margaret Hamilton was and Ray Bolger too, and Jack Haley. Watch interviews with Jack Haley. He is like miserable. Like,
I know. I've got the DVD version with there's a documentary on that, and he's on that, and I always remember him saying like, people say he must have had a lot of fun making that picture. Like hell, it was fun. It was hard work.
Yes, exactly.
Impression. That was
a great impression. But that's exactly what he says. He really was miserable. Like he's like, you forget that we had to stand. They didn't sleep
in the hot lights and all of that makeup. It was hard to eat. Bert Lahr, I can't imagine.
They all had it bad.
With his like heavy
He had a heavy costume. Scarecrow had like awful face paint that like leathered his face for like months after. Like,
not to mention Buddy Ebsen.
And then Buddy Ebsen almost died.
Oh my God. Yeah.
died. I mean,
and they fired him too, which I didn't know.
They fired him. Margaret Hamilton got burned. I mean, it's crazy. The set.
It was the most dangerous set ever.
It's crazy.
So, just in case people haven't listened to your podcast, can you let them know where they can find you?
You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are Down the Yellow Brick Pod. We're also on Instagram at Down the Yellow Brick Pod. You can email us downtheybb@gmail.com. And we would love to have you there.
And we just started our Patreon, which is super fun. And that's at Down the Yellow Brick Pod. So we have some fun ways to interact and just stay engaged in the land of Oz over there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
It was so fun to get to talk to you.
Take care then. Thank you.
Take care, Stephen.
Thank you.
To stay updated with Willow Audiobooks, you can follow us on social media. Just search for Willow Audiobooks on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Or you can visit our webpage at stephenalexanderwillis.com/Willow Audiobooks. Why not leave a rating or a review on iTunes or wherever you happen to get your podcasts?